Kelly, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you. I appreciate it.
My
Um,
pleasure. Thank you.
it is absolutely my pleasure. This is a really wonderful series. How did you come to be involved? How did it come to be?
About 4 years ago now, we had done a couple of like well-received historical docudramas for Netflix, and their documentary department called us and said, "Hey, we want to do a biblical
Mhm.
series or mini series." We weren't sure yet, and they said, "Would you guys be interested?" And we said, "Yeah." I mean, we love historical stuff. We love period drama. We all of that, and also big epic stories. And so we said, yeah. And they said, well, think about which which story you'd like to do from the Bible and get back to us. And so we went away and met, and literally within 5 minutes, the first thing was like, we want to do Moses. We want to do Moses because uh, it's such an iconic story and a touchstone for so many people of different faiths, people that even aren't necessarily of faith. Um, So we know it'll resonate with people, and we like the challenge of like, how can we, sorry about that, how can we find our different take on this story and make it feel, and tell a new story, even though it's got all of the things that people have come to love and to connect with about the story. And so we went back to Netflix and they said, yeah, let's do it. Um, and we set about coming up with our take and kind of our pitch for it and what our approach would be. And, you know, and that was all like right around COVID. And so lots of development and stuff during COVID. And finally, here we are, finally done.
Well, I would love to talk to you about that pitch, about that description, because this is really different than what we've seen before. There are documentaries that are about Moses, but then there are dramatic representations of them. But you blend them in such a really interesting way. Why was that important for you to do?
Um, well, what we wanted to do, we knew we had, I mean, automatically by tackling, telling this story, we had the epic, we wanted the intimate, and we felt like that's what was going to set ours apart and give it its own voice. And so, at first, and it's really not, I mean, I don't think anybody would watch this and say it's gritty, but the way we were describing it was like it's grittier, and it feels, we portray him more as a man who grew into this role as prophet, and very flawed, very kind of tortured and tormented, you know, didn't start off with the best set of circumstances in his life. And um, it's his search for like identity and his place in the world. And everybody can relate to that. But we also wanted it to be inspirational, because we don't just need to do a heavy series about Moses. And you know, we wanted to show the darkness that he had to endure and go through, but we also wanted it to be inspirational. And so we thought that's a good challenge as storytellers, and that'll also showcase or show all these sides of his character and his soul and who he was.
I think that's an interesting portrayal because the word, I hadn't thought of it as gritty, but the word I thought of is was more authentic. Like there's sort of a natural feel to
Yeah.
even the way this is established, and these characters are sort of unfathoming or unrolling. Obviously the granddaddy of them all is the Ten Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille, and everything is dramatic in that sense. But this film feels much more earnest in its approach in its conversations, I think, or a series, I should say, not film.
Yeah, and I think just given the magnitude of the story and the epicness of it, it's real easy. And I wouldn't fault anybody. I get there's different versions of it. It's real easy for that to be like awe-inspiring spectacle, but still keep you a little bit at arm's length. We wanted to literally kind of go inside Moses, but not live in his head. So it felt like it was some like thing that was so inaccessible that's like it's a guy that's just sad walking, going on his journey. So we're like, how can we bring that out? And how can we bring that out in his relationships with people? And I think our approach, our hope was in it that it would also make it feel more contemporary without losing
Yeah.
all the wonderful stuff of this thousands-year old story. Like we wanted to try to make him relatable to people.
Absolutely, and I think you do. He feels more grounded and in so many ways while still maintaining that sort of epic feel to the narrative. I think that's a tough balance to walk. Um, what what is it about Moses? He is a character who is central to multiple faiths, to the Christian faith, to Islam, and to the Jewish community. What is it about Moses per se that makes him such an iconic figure in your mind?
I think it's to me, it really is, it's the underdog story. It's like somebody who starts off being dealt a very bad hand. It's compounded by doing the unthinkable, like the worst thing you can do. He kills.
Yeah.
And then how do you live with that and not just live with it, but overcome and out of that tragedy find who you really are and what you're really meant, what you were sent to do and what you're to do. And so um I think it's that. And I think there also is that there, even though we tried to like go away from it, this kind of the super heroic portrayal, because it's been done and it's been done really well. Um, but I think people are drawn to that too. They like it. It's just it's like you're a hero, a bigger than life hero. And we thought you can have both of those. You can have that, and you can have somebody that says, "Oh, I know this person. I I felt the same way. I can relate to that struggle." And that was even echoed across faiths with our, interviews with our different experts from faiths, people that weren't even, coming from a faith perspective, but also had written on Moses biographies and stuff. They were all talking about like people can, because he had so many sides to him, different people from different walks of life can see themselves in him and his struggles and not feel alone, for lack of a better way to put it.
Absolutely. And one of and in these conversations, I was wondering from your perspective, was there anything in particular new that you took away about Moses? Because I mean, it's very interesting to hear multiple voices from multiple sides and traditions come in and share about him.
Um, on a why, in a broader sense, I was really surprised at how much overlap between the three major religions there are
Mm,
about the stories, and how, you know, people of those different faiths love him for the same reasons,
mm,
and how in so many ways see him the same. There are nuances and details in the story that are different, or in some faiths, parts of the story aren't there. But I think the coolest thing I learned was, um, there's when Pharaoh and his army are swallowed up by the Red Sea, and it's in the show. Celine talks about, in some extra Quranic literature, there's and Shadi talks about it too, is that Angel Gabriel was worried that Pharaoh was going to convert at the end and say, "I accept your God is the God," and so Angel Gabriel started putting mud in his mouth from the
mm.
seafloor, so he couldn't convert before the water swallowed him up, and just like little things like that. And even in the Midrash, for the Torah and stuff like that, there's just all these people, very human people, religious thought leaders of different eras, trying to explain what happened in the story. And so and it's funny how a lot of that stuff over the years, you look strictly in the text and it's not there, but you start looking at the extra text just outside of
Mm.
that. It's like, oh, this story is very organic. Like, people have added to it over the years and it keeps building. So I was kind of interested about how much of it also didn't necessarily come straight from the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, but was outside of that, but still
Yeah,
very part of it.
absolutely. It's such an interesting. There's an interesting conversation happening, um, both in the film or in the series, and by that I mean the dramatization, and amongst the people who are sharing. And I think this really interesting aspect to it. I wanted to ask you about one quote, and again, like it's from early on in the series, but I thought it was an interesting comment
Mhm.
that social justice begins with Moses.
Mm.
I wondered what you thought about that, and whether or not you believe that that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see his reason for saying that. And I think it's the reason I can see why he said that is, he's giving voice and agency to people who haven't had a voice for a long time. And that goes back to the relatability of this story, not just Moses' story, but the whole story is that, you know, it's, I mean, you've seen it in the African American community. There's a long tradition going back to slavery, like let my people go. So yeah, it's like somebody who's picking up the torch. And Bishop Luter also, is interesting. He made a comparison with Moses and Martin Luther King, you know, towards the end about getting to the promised land. I may not get there, but I can see it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that statement.
Well, and that brings us that I know we're starting to run out of time, but I know for one of the question or one of the things I really wondered in your mind is what in your mind is something that we can learn from Moses today? Because I know that that is a conversation that keeps coming up through the series, is people saying, well, this there's relevancy for us today. So what if anything from Moses do you think we can learn from the series or for today?
Um, I think it's it. I mean, it really is like it's faith. Like I think there are plenty of points in his journey and in the story where he had every reason to stop and
Mm,
like just say, I'm gonna go sit out in this field, out in this pasture, out in these mountains, and herd sheep. And I think it's listening to whatever that voice is that moves you and motivates you and give credence to it. And like say, this is I'm hearing this. This message is resonating with me for a reason. And you know, I need to pay attention to it because it's life changing. And that could be anything. It's just I'm amazed at his resiliency. And so to me,
mm.
that's that's the message I would take from it.
Yeah, that really comes out in his character because he's just constantly facing setback and setback. Actually, one of the voices, I forget who it was, says God didn't make the journey because God didn't make the journey easy because we aren't easy.
I
I think
love
that
that. Yeah.
it's a great quote. Um, Kelly, thank you so much for your time. I
Thank
really
you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too. It's a fascinating series, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.